Hello, and welcome to Morgan's Literacy Lounge. Today we're going to be talking about spelling and writing, and we're going to explore explicit spelling instruction strategies that are designed to support our multilingual learners and students with language variation. So, this is what we are going to be learning today: why explicit spelling instruction is crucial for writing, how to teach spelling through speech to print, and how we can adapt our spelling instruction for our ELL students. So, why spelling matters? Spelling is so much more than just memorization, which we need to remember. It frees cognitive energy for writing and reading comprehension when we are not just memorizing and we're actually understanding the spelling patterns and why we are spelling the words the correct ways. Accurate spelling improves writing fluency. It also builds student confidence and it reinforces the connection between sounds and letters. So, like I said before, spelling is not memorization. I think that is something that a lot of us, or not a lot of us, but a lot of people in the past have forgotten, or they just think, oh, I'm just going to memorize this and it's going to be helpful for me. But understanding the patterns of why certain words are spelled different ways is so much more beneficial, and it helps us with spelling all different kinds of words. When we understand the different patterns and we're not just memorizing a word just to memorize it, we need to understand why it's spelled the way that it is. So it is more than just memorization. It's effective spelling instruction is systematic, it's explicit, and it's pattern based. So we are going to teach those sound symbol relationships and not just random words. So, for example, if I'm teaching the f sound, we know that it can be spelled as many different ways. It can be spelled with just an F, it can be spelled double F with our PH or a GH. And so our students are going to benefit from understanding the rules rather than just guessing. So if I'm teaching my lesson, I want to make sure that I am teaching them behind why certain things are spelled the way that they are, instead of just, hey, just spell this word this way. I want them to understand this is why we use double F, or this is why I'm going to spell the F sound with the PH. Okay, and our next slide is about model for spelling development. So this comes from Cardenas Hagen. So they talk about our different stages. So there's pre-communicative, which is where students do not have knowledge of letter sound correspondences. So spellings are represented by random letter strings. The next is semiphonetic. So that's where letter sound correspondences are emerging, and that student has incomplete phonetic representation of words. After that, the next stage is phonetics. So that's where our students have a basic knowledge of phonetics, but they can also apply the sound features of words and represent the spellings. Then after that, we go to transitional, and that's where students at this stage, they are depending on that phonetic knowledge, but their previous experience, but also the previous experience with words. And they are also beginning to gain that morphological knowledge. And then at the end, we have the correct stage. So that is where during that stage, students are understanding all of the patterns and the rules, and they are being able to spell conventionally during that correct stage. So our considerations for our ELL. So we want to make sure that we are doing everything we can to benefit our students and setting them up for success. So when teaching spelling and writing to our English learners, there are several strategies to support them and to make sure that they are engaged. So when we are doing this, we want to make sure that we're using visuals, or even real objects can be very helpful. So showing pictures or word cards to help them connect sounds and letters to meaning. So for example, if I'm wanting them to spell the word cat, showing them a picture of a cat might be beneficial to them. It reinforces the spelling. When I'm contrasting the language one and the English spelling patterns, I'm going to highlight the differences between the student's first language and English. So for instance, if a student's home language does not use certain consonant clusters, I'm going to explicitly show how English handles them. And this helps prevent overgeneralizations for that student. And then lastly, providing the sentence stems and choral repetition. Sentence stems give the students like a scaffold to start writing independently, which is so beneficial for them. They're not feeling overwhelmed by having to provide that whole sentence. We're helping them and differentiating that for them. And then the choral repetition allows them to practice the pronunciation, the spelling patterns, and the sentence structure in a low stress, supportive way. So we're benefiting them, but also helping them in the same sense. So next, there are adaptations for language variation. So we want to make sure that we are validating that student's home language variation and doing that as much as we can, and letting them know that even though something might be different, it's totally fine, and supporting that. And then another way is we want to consider all potential error patterns. So for instance, if we're talking about spelling, if we're talking about Spanish, for instance, there's no PH in Spanish. So whenever I'm teaching that, I want to make sure that I'm acknowledging what certain languages might be missing that English has that they might not have. The next thing that can be beneficial for our English language learners would be the PLUS model, integrating that. So that stands for, pre-teaching vocabulary. We want to make sure that we're doing that. Language modeling. Modeling is so important for these students. Using visuals is always very, very, very important for them. Next is the systematic and explicit instruction. We want to make sure that we are always doing that. And then lastly, we want to make sure that we're having strategic use of the native language. And this model ensures that that these students can access spelling lessons effectively. So if I'm going to do a lesson and say I'm going to teach the sound, the spelling pattern, I'm going to acknowledge that there are multiple different spellings for that. So like I said before, there's F, there's double F, there's the PH and the GH. So I can do that by using multiple things. So I can use graphing tiles, I can use different cards, I can use magnetic letters. So down here at the bottom, I have shown some different things that you can use in your lesson that can be beneficial for those students. And then also you could, when talking about cards, like if you're spelling something that has any of those spelling patterns, we need to make sure that we can also use an actual card showing a picture of that word as well. So if I'm going to teach the lesson, like I said, I'm going to make sure that I'm explaining to them exactly what the F sound says. So I would do it, I would say, and I would have them watch my mouth, watch how my lips are, my teeth. You can even have them use a mirror so they can see it themselves. Having them watch that and make sure that they're doing the right mouth formation is very beneficial. And then we're going to talk about the different spellings for that sound. We're going to talk about how the most common spelling is F, but in short vowel words, we double it as the double F. And some words from Greek use PH, and others like laugh use GH. And so we're going to model reading and writing each example while explaining the pattern through each. So, and after I'm explicitly modeling that, I'm going to go into guided practice. And so I put over here just a little word sort, and then you could start off and not even have any words over here and just do, just F and double F, or then you can add the PH and GH however you wanted to do it. And then you could use whatever words you wanted, and you could do it to where you're having them slide over the words, or you could have them actually physically write the words out. That would be very beneficial for them having to write the words. So that's just a technique that you could have them do, sorting the words into each of the categories. So they can say, oh, well, I only see, an F here. I see a PH in this word. I see a double F. And then lastly, to practice some independent practice, we could go to our dictation. So with that, we are going to make sure that we are having students write sentences using the words from the sort, for instance. So you could do this whole activity as one. So you're going from teaching the F sound and all the different meanings behind each spelling, to then doing the word sort. And then if you have certain words that you want them to use from the word sort, you can bring that over into the dictation, the writing application. So you can have the students write the sentences using the words from the sort. So For example, you could have them say, the phone is stuffed in the bag. And you could use that as an example and model that for them. And then have them write that also. And you could also make sure you have a word bank, and that you're going to have that because you're going to have that from the word sort. You could also use sentence stems, which is also very beneficial for them. And you could also offer multiple modalities. So, if, for instance, you have a student who isn't ready to write yet, you could have them orally say it and then practice writing it, or even recording their saying to you, and then eventually start writing and writing it out. And then you want to encourage them to also, if they're able to, share those sentences with their peers or the class when they feel comfortable. And then next, our conclusion. So, to summarize, effective spelling instruction is systematic, it's explicit, and it's integrated with writing. So visuals, modeling, sentence stems, and adaptations for language variations support all learners. And so practicing and applying these strategies builds confident, capable writers. And when we have effective spelling instruction, we are empowering all students to become confident writers. Thank you for listening. And my last slide is my references.